Folks at home, welcome back to the Crimson Oak Pond, and we're in prime growing season for these largemouth bass right here in the peak of the summer. So we're going to be adding thousands of bait fish to help support those big appetites of these tiger bass. So this one's going to be action-packed, and everybody's eating good in this episode. And we even have a surprise appearance from our little bass fry named Truman that hatched a few weeks ago. But let's jump right into it, because the fish truck just showed up, and we're going to be stocking 12,000 threadfin shad today. And I stock them 2 to 3 times per year, but this is by far the most important stocking. And if you're a pond owner, I would highly recommend adding some threadfin shad right around the full moon in May. And that's because that kicks off the threadfin spawning season, and each female shad could lay between 2,000 to 24,000 eggs. And don't just take my word for it, because you're seeing it happen live in this video. Literally a couple days after we stocked them, the shad spawned, and our banks are covered with hundreds of thousands of these tiny threadfin shad. So to do some quick math, let's just say that out of the 12,000 shad we added, half of them, or 6,000, are females. So even if they laid the minimum amount of eggs, which is 2,000, that could produce 12 million threadfin shad, which is incredible. So I'm very excited that we got the timing perfect on this shad spawn, because they're going to help feed the tiger bass throughout the rest of the year. And for a largemouth bass to gain 1 pound, he has to eat 10 pounds of forage. And you know we're trying to get some 10-pounders in here, and that means each 10-pounder would have to eat 100 pounds of bait. But between the threadfins, bluegills, baby tilapia, and prawns, we're well on our way to providing that. And if you've ever seen a threadfin, they've always got that nervous or frantic type of swimming pattern. But an interesting fact about them is they don't have an air bladder. So a threadfin has to swim constantly or else it would sink to the bottom. But I had to slow some of these clips down so you could see them, and the majority of these shad are 1 to 2 inches and hatched this past week, but you will see a few adults mixed in there with them. And one other interesting fact is threadfins only typically live 2 to 3 years. So that's why it's important to get them in the pond, let them reproduce, and if you're ever able to keep that cycle going, you may only have to stock them once. And one other key feature to stocking threadfin shad is you need a good plankton bloom. And the timing was perfect on this. We got our best plankton bloom about 2 to 3 weeks ago, and it was almost too good. And that's the primary food source for a threadfin shad is plankton and zooplankton. So by having that nice fertile bloom, the shad get big quick, and that also leads to putting more weight on the bass. And as you can see, they are happy with the abundance of new bait in the pond. So now let's take a trip over to Cedar Falls, and if you go up to the top of the waterfall, that's called the wetland filter. And over the past few weeks, we added some tropical lilies, and the other day I was up here checking them out, and look who decided to show up. It's the little 3rd generation tiger bass we call Truman. So I was beginning to think the worst about Truman because we hadn't seen him since we put him in here. And if you guys recall, back in April when the bass spawned, I used a little dip net to try to catch a few of them, and I caught this little guy and let you all name him, and you guys decided on Truman. And how cool is that going to be, raising a pet bass from the first day of his life to maybe a potential 8 or 10 pounder. So I was thinking, Truman's probably hungry, and it just so happens that I've got a tank full of bait just his size. So I headed over to the freshwater prawn tank, and we're going to catch him a few and drop him in and get to see his first feeding. And here's an underwater shot of the little guy. He's obviously been eating something, probably those tadpoles. But if you look closely right there at the red arrow, that's one of the prawns hovering over the rocks. And Truman goes in to get him. But it happened so fast I couldn't see for sure if he got him. I had to slow it down, and it turns out the prawn is a little faster than Truman. So with all these rocks, he's going to have a tough time catching the prawns. So I decided to try some crickets. And he was interested. But Truman's going to learn a valuable lesson today. You gotta be quick. He wasn't fast enough and the cricket got away. So I decided to add something a little slower. I dropped the worm in and Truman came up to inspect it, but if you look closely, you'll see 2 long whiskers sticking out of his mouth. So at some point, the cricket must have jumped back in the pond and he got him after all. And it doesn't take much to fill up a 3-inch bass, so he passed for now. But he did come back later and decided to give the worm a shot, but it looks like he didn't have enough room in that little belly. Still full from the cricket. And he passed again. Now here's where the plot thickens. The next day I showed up to do another feeding, and at first I thought it was Truman's shadow, but it's actually a second bass in this pond. I have no idea how that happened. My best guess is there was another one in the dip net that I just didn't see. But sure enough, right there in plain sight, we've got a spitting image, and I bet they're going to make a dynamic duo. So this little guy's going to need a name as well. So leave me a comment down below on what you think we should name the new guy. And I also found it interesting that we got some snails in the wetland filter. I guess pretty much any body of water they're going to make it into, probably brought in from the birds. And Cedar Falls is coming along nicely. Got all the lily pads blooming, and there's no better place to hang out in the summertime than right here by the waterfall. But now it's time to check in on all the pets that live here. And these three guys are like my shadows whenever I come around the pond. We got Tiger right there on the left, Johnny and June on the right, and if you've seen our previous videos, we always work in a tandem, and every day I walk up to the pond, they swim over to the base of the waterfall and get in position, because there's always a big school of shiners hanging out around the waterfall. So my job is simple. I have to step in the water, spook them all out to the deeper end, and that's where they get ambushed. Now take a moment to listen to that wonderful sound, the topwater blow up. I can't tell for sure, but I think that's June that swam all the way up in here to the waterfall. That's rare. It's pretty shallow in here, only about 12 inches, but this warm water's got them ready to eat. Man, I could watch that all day. There's some blooms on one of the tropical lilies. Those turned out to be a great addition to the pond. And something else I was really excited to see in our last video was our two pet bass in here named Johnny and June had a successful spawn, and we've got a few dozen baby bass swimming right here in this shallow pocket. So we're thinking about adding a few of them to the 300-gallon aquarium, and today I just wanted to see how easy it would be to catch them. And it was pretty easy to catch a couple of them. So we'll plan on making that transfer for a few of them here soon. We got Johnny hanging out over here by the beach. Hoping I'll run some more shiners his way. And one of the baby turtles that lives right there under that lily pad. So if you missed our last video, we had a small mechanical issue with our volcano pump. So I got the guys from Southeastern Pond to come out here, and they've got the perfect lift on the front of their boat that'll hoist the pump up, which makes it a lot easier to get it out in the middle of the pond and set. And it's best to put it in around that 6-foot depth range. So for us, that's right out in the middle of the pond. And this time they're going to anchor it down with 4 anchor ropes and try to strategically put them behind some of those structure piles so it doesn't interfere too much with the fishing. And the volcano pump is back in action, and that's going to help me sleep a lot better at night. And you can see the water was really clear this spring, and then you'll get that green pea soup look after the plankton bloom, and you just really have to monitor it closely, because if you get too thick of a bloom, sometimes a random thunderstorm in the summer can rapidly kill that plankton bloom off and create a dissolved oxygen issue. But by having this volcano pump, it's like an insurance policy that'll keep those fish kills from happening. And here's another shot of the pond from this week. It took a little while, but that plankton bloom thinned out, and now it's starting to look more like natural pond water. Alright, got a nice sunset out here at the pond. I had a special request from a subscriber that said I should use the pit tag scanner right here at the base of the eagle tower, basically checking to see if an eagle had ever grabbed a fish and basically discarded the tag down here on the ground. So we're gonna start scanning. Hopefully this thing doesn't go off. We'll just scan the area, and no tags found, so either the eagles ate the tags or they hadn't captured a tagged bass. And the bass are gonna be happy because the thread fins aren't the only ones spawning. We're starting to see big groups of tilapia fry, and you can see their swimming patterns are completely different. But the one key giveaway is that there's a certain amount of baby tilapia that are going to be born albino. And those guys really stand out. So one of the perks of being friends with Greg the Pond Guy, he's always sending us care packages. These are going to hold some of the lilies that we have right over here in the wetland filter, because I actually really like them right here in this area. So you see those little green hooks right there? Those are really small pots that the lilies came in. We're going to plant them in these, give the roots more room to grow, even send along some fertilizer. And these are perfect for the wetland filter. You can see the height on it compared to a normal bucket. Fill the bottom up here. Then add a little fertilizer. A little more soil on top. Look at the blooms on this guy. That's a nice one. You can tell it was already out of room. Alright, just about there. Now we're going to add a little bit of gravel and make sure to leave the top of the lily exposed. And there we go. Time to add her back to the water. Alright, we're going to start it off shallow right here. But in case I hadn't already mentioned it, these are tropical lilies. They only last 1 year. Perfect little spot for it. just like it was meant to be, right here in front of the waterfall. Alright, it's time to adjust these just a little bit. So the Victorian's the only one that has little stickers on the end of it, and I know since Sarah's going to be playing right here at the beach, we're going to scoot it over there and scoot the tropical one a little closer. But the good thing about these is that even though they're in that big heavy pot, once you get them in the water, you can easily just float them around. So those little stickers I was telling you about to help protect it. And today's video is brought to you by Element. After long hot days out here at the farm, it's important to stay hydrated. And in our previous videos, you've seen the drink mix hydration packs, but Element is excited to announce a new way to stay hydrated with Element Sparkling. And it offers the same zero sugar electrolyte formulation now in a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling water. And Element has formulated the perfect amount of sodium, potassium, magnesium, and zero sugar to keep you hydrated. And the right amount of electrolytes can help you maintain steady energy, improve cognitive function, have fewer headaches and muscle cramps, and also keep your skin hydrated. And the sparkling flavors include citrus salt, watermelon salt, grapefruit salt, as well as the debut of the new black cherry lime flavor, only available in sparkling. So if you're interested in checking out the drink mix packets or the new sparkling, go to drinklmnt.com/BamaBass and you can get a free Element sample pack with any drink mix order by using the link in the video description. And each sample pack includes 1 packet of 8 flavors. But the best part is they have a no questions asked refund policy. So do me a favor, go check them out and join the Salty Rebellion. So here's something else that just showed up the past couple of weeks, and that's a submerged vegetation, and I'll hop in here and grab some of it so you can see it. But after talking to the biologist, they identified it as cara grass, and it's actually an algae, not a grass. But it's one of the more friendly types of grasses out there, and the fish really love it. You can see they're making pockets and things down in it. The bass use it for an ambush point. Tilapia use it for bedding. It'll also help some of them threadfins make it to adult size. But cara grass typically stays submerged and doesn't make it all the way to the surface. But the biggest benefit is it's really easy to control. And so if it gets out of hand, you spray the banks and problem solved. Guys, I just have to say it is unbelievable how many threadfin shad are swimming the banks of this pond. And it's basically anywhere you go around the bank. If you look down, there's going to be a steady stream of shad that is never ending. And the wild thing is, when I come out early in the morning, you'll see the shad flickering up there on the surface right around the grass. So I think some of them are still spawning. It's incredible. I've never seen this much bait in my life. So this could potentially be the last time we have to stock the threadfins. But the one other thing you have to look out for as a pond owner, they can't survive harsh winters. Anytime that water temp drops below about 42, it could wipe out the whole population. But I don't think we'll have that issue in this pond. They're much more likely to be wiped out by the bass. Because as you can see, when the bass start feeding pretty heavily on them, you'll lose some of them just to being knocked out onto the bank. And there's a little trail of them. You can see the bass were eating good. But I was also thinking these baby threadfins are the perfect size for Truman and his counterpart. So let's go catch a few and bring it up and have a feeding. There's a good look at the size of them. Let's get him dropped in. Oh, and he's doing that wounded threadfin circular pattern on the surface. If that doesn't draw a strike, nothing will. Truman. Got him. It's almost like I had to call him out of his little hiding hole. Let's drop another one in for the other guy. He even came back for a second one. Couldn't even fit him in his mouth. And I was wondering what they've been eating to survive this long, but there's always bugs and tadpoles and other things like this around a body of water. But I also wanted to check in on that 3rd generation of bass that just hatched this spring at the same time as Truman and see how they were doing in the 5-acre pond. So I put some underwater cameras around where those threadfins were hanging out, and sure enough, it lured a little school of them in. And I'd have to say that Truman has been eating pretty good because I think they're almost identical in size, with the one major difference being that these little guys in the 5-acre pond have to live in fear because at any moment a bigger bass could eat them, while Truman's up there living a stress-free life. And one of the snails in the pond is doing me a favor. and helping me clean the lens on the camera. Sun's going down. Shad are still rippling up there on the banks. This is one of my favorite parts of the day. Get to come out here at sunset, feed the bass. You can see we got them hanging out down here right around the dock. And toss some golden shiners onto them. Alright, let's try to hand feed one. And as you watch some of these fish feed, pay close attention to their size. There's several of them that are getting on up there. Some of these probably in the 3-pound class range. But I suspect that with the abundance of thread fins, also the tilapia and prawns, we should start seeing some bass around that 5-pound range this year. And these fish are right at 2 years old. We stocked them in June 2022. And we already had one named the Goat that was pushing 5 pounds back in November. But one interesting thing that I find about this particular strain of bass is they haven't really ever messed with the bluegills too much. So typically that's one of the primary food sources of the bass, but I like to watch them at night when they're swimming around that green light, and the bass don't really mess with the bluegills that much. You see them swim right there by them like they don't really feel threatened. But I have a feeling that's because as the bass were growing up, there was an abundance of that smaller bait, so that's what they targeted and got used to. But once you see a bass start getting around the 5-pound range, the bluegills better watch out, because it's much easier for a bass to eat a half-a-pound bluegill than to chase a dozen thread fins around. So I have a feeling once bluegills hit the menu, we're going to see some good growths. So I had some leftover crickets, and I wanted to feed the bluegills in Cedar Falls. But this particular bluegill learned a quick lesson, and that's do not hesitate around a bass. And these bass in particular have that aggression bred into them. And I always forget how much bass like crickets. I mean, it makes sense because anything that swims on the surface like a frog, they're gonna eat it. Oh, and this little cricket better stay on that lily pad. Oh no, he's swimming in the wrong direction. Got him. But I'm happy to see that these 3 bass are getting along. We just added Tiger in with Johnny and June a couple weeks ago, and sometimes when you add a new fish in, they'll get really aggressive or territorial. But I think the carrying capacity of this pond is plenty big enough at 30,000 gallons to support multiple bass where they can all claim their own little zone and not sit right there on top of each other. And I'll have to keep some underwater cameras rolling because now that the tilapia are spawning in the 5-acre pond, they should start spawning in this pond as well. Because that is the goal, is to have a constant source of bait, always reproducing and sustaining itself, so you don't constantly have to add more food for the fish. Let's see if he saw the cricket on top of the lilies. They don't miss much. A bass eating directly off a lily pad is about the best sight you'll ever see. Alright, we had a really good feeding session for everybody today. All the fish should be happy. Now let's dive underwater and see what's going on beneath the surface. And you can quickly see our little school of bass. Looks like most of them have made it. We also got one of the little turtles coming out. So I decided to drop a few pellets in for the turtle. And of course, he better come quick because I know the bluegill's going to eat them. But check that out. The tilapia is also eating the protein pellets. But I'm not that surprised because I have heard that tilapia will eat almost anything. Oh, the turtle was late and he almost got one. That's the name of the game today. You gotta be fast and not hesitate, but the little turtle was going as fast as I think he could. Check that out. Tiger even ate one of the pellets and then spit it out. He said no thanks. One last shot of the turtle and the baby bass fry. And here's the 2 female tilapia over snacking on some algae. Now it's time to check in on the squirrel house. And so far, nobody has completely claimed it. But as you can see, several animals stopped by and check it out. And we tried to build the entrance small enough to keep things like the raccoon out. But you can see, that did not work as planned. That's a big raccoon and a tiny house. You can even see him checking out the bed, saying, I wish that they would have made it a little bit bigger for me. And so here's the little guy that we want to move in, but unfortunately, every time he stops by, all the food and nuts and things we put out to draw him in are gone, so we have not been able to lure him in just yet. But this is the one that spends the most amount of time in this house, and that's the mouse that we call Gus Gus. Gus Gus is quick to come through and collect all the snacks we leave out. And this is the one that we call Gus Jr. He's a little bit too late for the snacks tonight, and you can also see a little timid. Hopped up on the bed. We may have a new resident. And this is a different raccoon that stopped by later that night. And he's very intrigued. You can see he's looking for the entrance. But once he pokes his head in there, I'm not sure if he saw Gus Gus or Gus Jr., but thankfully he didn't try to enter because he is bigger than the last one. I don't think Gus Gus is happy about Gus Jr. being in there in his bed. Alright, we got another opportunity the next morning. Still no snacks out, and the same result. But look at there. Now we got a pair of squirrels. Alright, I just got everything cut down here at the half acre. We are going to put out a soybean and corn mix. So the corn's really just there to get them coming, and then we'll start going strictly soybeans because I hadn't put out cameras in a little while, but I suspect the deer are starting to put on their antler growth, and that protein always helps them out. Then we'll check in with the cameras and see what comes out tonight. Alright, we got one of those same raccoons showing up here at the feeder. You can also see the bucks are in velvet and starting to put on some growth. There's a few of them. They're starting to fork out now. And a young buck in the daytime with the hawk back in the background. He's a little spooked right now, but I like the daytime shots of him. And hey, there's our two little squirrel friends. Now that they're hanging out at the feeder and the house, we should probably just go ahead and name them. So leave your comments down below on what you think we should name the pair of squirrels. The raccoon's getting a little feisty out here on cleanup duty. And that's probably the biggest buck we've seen so far, but that's why we're putting out these protein pellets to help out with that antler growth. And hey, we even had Peter Cottontail show up. Also got some young bucks walking through the pond right here in Bonnie's Bayou. Alright, it's time to catch a few of these bass, see how big they've gotten. They should be putting on the weight. But you guys know the deal, every time we catch one, we scan it. If it hadn't been tagged, we'll use this to inject a tag. We'll also get a weight on it and add it to our database. And with all the shad activity, I got a couple different shad style baits. We had a topwater whopper plopper, spinner bait. And believe it or not, these fish have never seen a spinner bait, so that may work out really good. I'd say they're ready to eat the spinner bait. Got him that time. Right at the bank. Nice one. Alright, this is 569597. This guy weighs 2.05. And this fish is named Nemo, and I'm happy to see this data because I caught her 2 times back in April, and she was thin and post-spawn, but it's good to see her starting to put that weight back on. Got it. On the spinnerbait, right over that grass. Alright, this fish has been caught 570827. 1.71. And this fish is named Unit, and it's the only fish that had a little bit of decline in growth since the last time we caught it. But that was just 1 month ago, and could have just been the difference in what that fish ate that particular day. So spinnerbaits excel in these conditions when you got a little bit of wind on the surface. You got the underwater grass because it can go right over the top of that grass and not get hung in it. So perfect bait for today. Got him every cast. Now this is a Gen 2 bass, but check that out. Red tail like they're spawning here in June. These fish always amaze me. Got him. A little better than the last one. Alright, this one's been caught 69638, and it weighs 1.82 pounds. And this fish is Bertha, and you can pretty much find Bertha feeding throughout the entire pond. Got him on top water. Well, if they start eating top water today, it's gonna be fun. Alright, this one's 157-1208. It weighs 2.13. And this fish is named Dixie. 4th time we caught her. Some good progress in weight. There we go. Good one. This one's so big it can't jump out of the water. Nice one. Alright, everyone's been caught today. 5.69975. This one weighs 1.80. And this fish is Cypress, and it's been over a year since we caught Cypress. There he is. Finally got him to bite. This feels like a good one too. Wow. Now it's not out. There we go. Now we're getting a little bigger. Alright, this fish has been caught. 5.70601. 2.13. This is Quasimodo, another fish with a slight dip in weight, but in March it could have been pre-spawn, and that's one of the heaviest times of the year, so hopefully the next time we catch Quasimodo, that weight will be much higher. Got it. Nice one. Alright, this one's been caught. 5.69736. This one weighs 2.20. And swims shady, putting on about a half a pound since March. So I started running cameras on the feeders again because I'm interested to see if the bass will come over and start feeding on the bluegills right here when the feeders go off. They did it a little bit last fall, but now that they've gotten much bigger, we should start seeing that, and it's pretty obvious when it happens. You see a big splash and a bluegill flying up in the air, like you'll see in a couple of these clips. Oliver, you see the crab? You see the crab? Yeah. Yeah, you're not afraid of him, are you? We're going back in the water. Ready? Say bye-bye. So Liz called me and Sarah over to do some investigative work because something was eating the ends off of all of her tomato plant stems. And it didn't take long to find the culprit. Check out this guy, just munching away. Very interesting little critter, but Liz says you got to go. Alright folks, that is going to wrap up this video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to follow along with all these ponds and pets, because you truly never know what you're going to see next. Hope you all enjoyed this video, and we will see you all next time.